Florida, and all of you in attendance. Um, so let's see what we got. All right, so here's stuff I've learned in the last since basically March, as we have all learned since March, other things, and world has changed, and or has it? This is something that just popped up onto my screen. So I was on Wikipedia, as I often am, researching something, and this message came up. We humbly ask you to defend, now that's a good word, defend Wikipedia's independence. Now they've gotten me into a fight. 98% of our readers don't give. They simply look the other way. And if you're one of the exceptionals who've already donated, which I happen to be because Wikipedia has been extremely useful in my career, often looking stuff up, many things, many times a day. And so, yeah, of course I would give to them. But what I want you to see here is that 98% of our readers do not give. And why this is important, because I believe a lot of charities are under the, well, let's just call it delusion for now. I don't mean to be, uh, casting delusions, but they think, oh, well, anybody could give to us. And that's not true. Most of your charity, it follows the old Pareto 80-20 rule. Most of your charity for any specific cause is going to come from a certain relatively small group of people. And those are the people that you need to find. Those are your truest of true believers. Those are the people you need to find. Those are the people who make a second gift. Getting people to make a first gift to any charity is, well, it's not child's play, and it's not easy, but it's often an impulse purchase, or they're supporting somebody in a peer-to-peer fundraising event or something like that. Getting that second gift from somebody is far more important. So, for instance, NPR, National Public Radio, how many people from their intense listenership will actually support them during a fund drive in a year? And the answer to that is something like 7%. So 93% of the people who are listening and appreciating and enjoying NPR, maybe combatively, they're not giving. And that's the real world of fundraising. Okay, so let's take another look at something that has popped up since March 2020. An emergency e-appeal template that works. Some of you, Ruth, for instance, has used this template. And this is what it looks like. It comes from the Better Fundraising Company, which is Stephen Screen and his buddy, what's his name, out in Jim, out in Seattle. And they really, really, really do know what they're doing. And they came up with this formula. They teach it online for free. And I've just extruded it from that video that they do. Number one, state that the message is urgent. I don't normally send you emails like this, but these are desperate times. Describe the situation, how it's hurting your beneficiaries. The coronavirus is already forcing moms and kids to the edge of homelessness by devastating their income. And then we move forward, we hope. Then we have asked for a special gift, and this is number 3 of 8 points. And the thing in red there is important. Most donors are not going to read past here. So already you've learned, even if you weren't going to use this emergency template, you've learned something important about effective communications. You have to be much faster than one assumes. And people don't read that deeply. And if you can tell me why it is you're trying to get my attention and tell me what you want me to do as fast as possible, then I'm very likely to say, well, I'm going to either say yes or no. And if you're a good cause, and it's a day when I have some time, then I will, there's a chance I'll say yes. And then it goes on through 5 more steps. And they're all here, and you're going to all get this PDF as a handout, and that's all you'll ever need. You don't have to remember anything. If you're taking notes, you can stop now because you're going to get the PDF. You can just have it there as an easy reference. And this is also part of your PDF, which is an actual email appeal sent out, built on top of this 8-point formula for better fundraising. And I numbered each of the places where these various steps happen so that you can easily follow along and just replace what Morningside Ministries, which is down in San Antonio, Texas, did very successfully. They were just trying to get a special appeal done quickly to retrofit 2 senior living facilities with high-speed internet access to cut down on the isolation that had come into everyone's life thanks to the coronavirus. All right. So that was 2020. 2020 has been a busy year. Oh, and I also learned how to do Zoom, as you can, well, at least a little bit. I'm not, I, I can't do the fancy pants stuff like Sarah can, but I'm on Zoom a couple times a week. Probably the rest of you are too. Okay, what did we learn last year that is important? Well, this is a message that kind of bubbled up, and it's been bubbling up for a long time, but it finally reached a full expression for me in 2019 when I went to Scotland to teach a master class with Jen Shang, who is a psychologist. She's a psychologist specializing in philanthropic behavior. Why do people make a gift? Right? What is the impulse? And one of the things that is very important in Jen's worldview is this concept: don't thank me for my gift. Thank me for who I am. Thank me for my identity. Thank me for my self-identity. Thank me for being a compassionate person, for instance, a kind person, for instance. And because the gift is actually a byproduct of this willingness to get off my butt and do something. Inertia is your biggest problem in fundraising, in my opinion. And when somebody actually goes from inert to active and makes that gift, either writes a check, goes online, clicks through, does what you ask them to do, that's a very special person. Let's go back to that 98% of Wikipedia people. These are the users of Wikipedia. 98% do not make a gift. And so the people who do make a gift, very important people. This is a cover of a newsletter that is being created, and you're seeing an early draft version of it where we're working out the language that will be on it. It's for an overseas charity that raises money in the US for refugees. And the name of it is now Because You Care. And the reason that's there, and you can see some labels here: connected, autonomy, competence. Those 3 connected, autonomy, competence are the 3 things that are the basis for human well-being, according to modern psychologists. And so we're trying, in the first seconds of your encounter with this newsletter, this is the cover, we're trying to make you feel connected. We're trying to make you feel competent. And we're also saying you made the decision, that's autonomy. You made the decision because you care, this good, you know, uh, cause, this mission, this vision is possible, right? So I labeled this just so you could see that when you do have a lot of psychology, you're aware of it, you can start to pack it into your communications, and they're going to be far more effective. And when I say effective, I mean they'll make more money, right? That's all I mean. They'll make more money. So here's something else we're learning from the Institute for Sustainable Philanthropy, which is Jen Shang's organization. She's there with her husband, Dr. Adrian Sargent, who is a marketing professor who specializes in, again, fundraising, right? And all they're trying to do is make the world more philanthropic, to raise more money. And they're doing it in a very deep way through psychology and applied marketing research and so forth. One of the things they also talk about is that people give for their own reason. Now, this is not going to be any huge surprise. You probably could have, figured this out just by thinking about it a little bit. People give for their own reasons. They are on a personal journey. So every day you're writing a new chapter in the book of your life. And part of that chapter could be, well, today I responded positively to an appeal from somebody, let's say the refugee people, and I feel better about myself because of that. I'm on a personal journey. Now, the flip side of this coin is what you see on your screen. The real and only real purpose of donor communications. Often, if you asked your CFO, if you had such a person on staff, what's the purpose of donor communications? That right away they'd say, to make money. Yeah, baby, stay in the black. Well, not true. The money, yeah, that's what you want, but that is a byproduct. And the byproduct comes from you making your donor feel good. And the word feel there is extremely important. And look at the different ways you can do it. They're all in the red stuff. And you can probably think of a dozen others yourself, But if you thank me, for instance, beyond my expectations, oh, that feels so good. Most charities are very stingy with their thank yous, very kind of uptight on behalf of the board of directors. Oh, God, how trite. I'm on a journey. If you help me on that journey, then I feel good. If you tell me I'm important and you tell me I am needed, I feel good. If you surprise me, because this is the human, we are curious animals. If you surprise me, I feel good. These are the reasons for doing donor communications, not to make money, but to make me feel good, to make people feel good, and therefore they give you money. They like you. Okay, we're going to also learn about identities, and this is another thing 2019 gave me, was a strong sense of how we use identity in donor communications. Now, today's identity, we're all, suffering. We are all under lockdown. We're wearing masks. Who knew you'd be out there in the world wearing masks? Usually you'd get arrested if you wore a mask and went into a store. Now you have to wear a mask. So that's today's identity. And Angela McBride was reporting back in March, as the coronavirus started to take over the world, that her team sent these simple emails to donors. All they basically said, the subject line was, "How you doing?" Very plain English, conversational. How are you doing? And and look what happened. They got all these responses came back, and some of them long responses, because people needed that connection. Remember, go back to human well-being. What are the three things? Well, one of them is I need to connect with other people, right? So that was today's identity. Then you have your, whatever your emotional identity is, which is comprised of many things. And for instance, by the way, that the woman in the upper left-hand corner, that is a typical U.S. donor, not the Caucasian part. Caucasian is optional, but that age, that gender, is where most of U.S. donors are. That's their demographic, right? So be aware of that, please. Anyway, she's got, you know, lifetime of emotional responses, that are packed into her brain, and you can work with that. That's, you're looking for triggers. So one of the things you have to do, again, we come back to the word feeling. See that word? Is it feel? You know, it's made special. That's because if you don't make me feel, then you're not getting to the right part of my brain. The part of my brain that makes a gift, the part of my brain that causes me to get beyond my inertia to act on your behalf, is the part that is my feeling part, not my reasoning part. The reasoning comes second, the feeling comes first, if you're talking about making a gift. So here's a wonderful outbound envelope written by the incredible Roger Craver, one of the greatest fundraising copywriters ever. And he doesn't ordinarily use what are called teasers on his direct mail, but in this case he did, because he knew that the right people getting this in their mailbox would say, yeah, let's sue the bastards. So that was important. Now here's Soy Dog. They're a animal welfare charity based in Bangkok, Thailand. And they used to be a tiny, tiny charity. And they were, you know, just a handful of wonderful people who were trying to do something about these poor animals they saw on the street. And they didn't have any money, so this was the early days of Facebook, and they said, well, let's try Facebook. It doesn't really cost us anything. See if we can raise some money. Well, they had the help of a good agency, and the agency produces ads like this, and now they are an enormous charity. They make $7 for every dollar they spend on Facebook advertising. And animal welfare charities around the world follow their lead, and they, you know, this is a typical ad for them. Actually, this is off their website from their giving page, and you have a before and after, which is what so many charities are, before and after charities. You know, look at that. Oh, look at how horrible that looks on the left, and yet on the right, the animal is looking you in the eye, looks healthy, looks happy. Well, as happy as cats can look. And, you know, things are better, obviously. These are the common emotional triggers that are taught to copywriters when they are first getting going. And they're just arranged here alphabetically, not by potency. You kind of pick and choose. Okay, we're going to start with anger. Maybe we'll go to hope. Then we, or how about fear? Then we go to hope. Or how about flattery? Then we go to, yeah, we said, as you can see, we often end up with hope. Perfect example of a statement that you can use or think about to spur emotional responses. If you've ever wondered, now you're speaking to a very special person. You're speaking to people who have wondered. If you never wondered what you'd do during slavery, the Holocaust, or civil rights movement, well, you're not a good candidate for a gift. But if you have wondered what you would have done, you're doing it right now, which is kind of a little bit of a guilt trigger, I guess, if you're not doing anything right now. But if you are doing something right now to help whatever, like the Black Lives Matter movement, well, then you're doing it right now, and you should feel good about that. So let's go to here, show you some covers from various capital campaigns, all of which succeeded, so we can say, I guess they were successful. And I've labeled them with the emotional triggers that were used. Now, these are the covers. So this is the first thing that a prospect would encounter. And I see on the upper left there, that's the National Parks Conservation Association, and they are a private group that raises money to help the always perpetually underfunded national park system in the United States. And what they have in here is a series of spreads where they look at the dangers that surround every national park, and every national park is endangered all the time by outside interests who would love to get in, for instance, and mine uranium in the Grand Canyon. Wow, cool, let's do that. And so you get them angry, you get them being your prospective donors, fearful of this potential, and then you say, but there is hope, thanks to you. Kind of the same thing here with the Connecticut Humane Society. We show a picture of a dog not looking, altogether happy. And we make the statement, they need you for something big and wonderful. And what it was is a second major animal hospital in Connecticut for people that don't have a ton of money. Now, True North, they're trying to be they're excellent. This is the Anchorage Museum up in Alaska. Excellent, excellent regional museum, but they want to go international because they're sitting on the doorstep of global, well, the ice caps are melting, sorry to say, and they are right there. They can observe it, and they want to record it. And so they want to do, but they don't want to do it in a political way. They want to do it in a scientific way. That is True North, the campaign to go world-class fast, to record this event on the planet. And then finally, Fear and Hope. And that's just, this is a general case for support for MDI Biological Laboratory up in Maine. And they do things you wouldn't believe, which is it's actually how we got the title for this. Yeah, it's real, but it sounds like science fiction. It has to do with aging, for one thing. Okay, so that's the emotional identity. Now you have the species identity. In other words, you come equipped. You've got software, you've got firmware, you've got hardware that's all built into your nervous system and your brain. Your brain has got 15 million years of evolution packed in there. And we need to work with it rather than, let's say, work against it, because working with it gets us much further. So what do we already have packed in? Well, we have species things that are pretty predictable, and not everybody has them, but one of the things we learn from biology is that there is something called the cuteness factor. And you can see on the left are the cute baby and puppy and kitten, and then you have the adult version of the same animals. Now, the cuteness factor is actually a signal in biology. We go, oh, they're so cute, but what that actually is biology telling us that thing we call cute is a need for care. It is an expression of vulnerability, so that we take care of our young. We take care of anybody's young, for that matter. We take care of kittens and puppies, for that matter, because they're young and the cuteness factor kicks in. It's just built in. So this is Vida Joven, Joven, and it's based in Tijuana, Mexico, and it's an orphanage. And you can only imagine what life was like before these kids got into the orphanage. They're on the streets. Tijuana is one of the murder capitals of the world, and they have no protectors. So on the homepage of Vida Joven, you have this statement, will you keep me safe? And basically it's a moral challenge. And I can, say, well, no, I'm kind of busy right now. Or I can say, oh man, yeah, I'll do that. I'll donate now. Now, again, 98% of Wikipedia people don't donate. So you've got to understand that you're reaching a very special person when that person hits the blue donate button rather than looking at the FAQs button. Okay. Here's principle number one, and there is no principle number two in today's show, so this is the only one you have to remember. When you like your donors, they will like you back. And this is the Institute for Sustainable Philanthropy, Jen and Adrian. And, you know, you look at this and go, okay, all right, makes perfect sense. Really, you had to research that to find that out? Well, yes, apparently we did. Because nonprofits actually don't work this way in their communications. They want to talk about how wonderful the charity is, and maybe you will want to be part of them. What you need to do is flip that over and go, you know, express to your donors, we love you. And if you do that enough times, they're going to come back and say, well, then here's more money. Um, Again, the same concept over and over. She is not your donor. You are one of her charities. So when somebody says, yeah, my favorite charities are bung, 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 that's the list you want to be on. Now, most donors, people that are so-called philanthropically inclined, so they are responsive to appeals, they will tend in a year to give to 5, 10, 20, 30. Our household gives away about $60,000 a year. That goes to a lot of charities. Now, are we bonded to all of them? No, we are not. We are especially bonded to about 6 of them, and the rest are kind of a shifting list of people that we find interesting for some reason. Okay, you want to go to the top of that list, one of her charities, you have to work at that. And you have to work at liking and loving your donors. Now, I want to show you, this is brand new. Came out in 2019. It's brand new research. How do you actually find the right words to say to your donors? Well, what are the right words? Here's Jen again, and this is back when she was just getting her PhD from Carnegie Mellon. And she did research into what words do Americans use to describe good people. And these are the words that she found we use in this country to describe good people, the kind of people we want to live next to, the kind of people we want as our friends, the kind of people we want teaching our kids. Kind, caring, compassionate. You can see what the list is. Now, how many of these words are actually just another way of saying philanthropic? Many of them, you know, generous, compassionate, helpful. And your communications, this is an important concept. Your communications are basically a mirror that you hold up to the people you're sending them to, your recipients, your target audience, and you say, this is who you really are. Now, they may not be this way every day and 24 hours a day, but they need to be reminded, because they can't tell themselves this, that, yeah, you are a kind and caring, compassionate person. So Jen does these quick little surveys of people, donors, basically. And on the left, you can see a word cloud, and same on the right. The word cloud on the left is a response to the question, what are the top 5 words that come to your mind when you describe yourself? Okay, and this went out to the Royal National Lifeboats Institute, which is a UK charity. It's been around since 1830. It rescues people. Volunteers go out in special boats and rescue people from drowning. And it's a beloved charity. It's been around forever. And look what they say about themselves. And again, you know, the typical donor, not your I wish donor, but a typical real donor is what you see on the left. What are you? Retired. What are you? Old. But active, old and active, and also caring. Look at how big that word is. That's the biggest word in the cloud. Then on the right, they ask another question. What are the top 5 words come to your mind when you describe yourself as a supporter of Royal National Lifeboats Institution? And different words come up, but there is some overlap. And some of the overlap are the words caring and helpful. Now, what these little surveys, and the reason they're only 5, think of 5 words, is because when you ask them to think of 7 words, it's too much trouble. And so 5 words is kind of the, feels easy and they'll do it. So you're trying to develop what's Jen calls a mirror vocabulary. And when there's an overlap between the 2 word clouds that you just saw, like the word caring overlap between those 2 word clouds, then you can start to use words like that. You don't have to use that exact word, but the concept of caring to produce a higher response. As you can see here in their testing, it produced 149% higher response. And here's some of the actual communications that came out of that research that you just saw with those 2 word clouds. And this is online. This was the homepage. Look back at it's March 17th. Hey, St. Patty's Day. And the coronavirus. And is a big issue, and everybody's starting to freak out big time. And this is on the homepage. You're part of our crew, and crew members look out for each other. Watch a special message for you. Now, the language there was had not been created before that research was done. That language you see here was created after the research was done, and they saw where the overlap was, particularly words like caring. And so you're part of our crew. Crew members look out for each other. Watch this video. So you go to this video, and it plays, and there's Dave. Now, Dave is a typical volunteer, good-looking guy, ready to go, ready to save people from drowning. Hi there, my name is Dave, and you're probably feeling uncertain about the future too, like I am, but that's why I wanted to get in touch. We're sending our support to you. You're part of the crew, and crew members look out for each other. Thank you so much for thinking of us in the past. Right now, we're thinking of you too. No ask at all. Just a video coming out saying you're part of the crew. Crew members look out for each other. Right now, we're thinking of you. All right, and it's Dave. All right, so let's look at this some more. Institute for Sustainable Philanthropy. People's sense of who they are is what psychologists call the self. And the self is comprised of many identities. This is my beloved mentor, wife, and co-worker, Simone Joyaux, who you also listened to this morning. And this is her in the museum at Oslo in front of a very famous painting called The Scream. And you can see from her t-shirt what her identity is in part. And she's just mimicking the screen. That's what an identity actually looks like. She wants more women to be elected. Okay, so all of your donors, all of you that are listening to me right now, you are the sum of many identities, but there's 6 to 10 that are probably easily accessible to the charity, to the fundraiser, to the communications person that you can talk to. And it was funny. I'm going to show you what this looks like, but you can see the voice balloon. Really, the Community Foundation got all 10 wrong, because what I did is I went to a community foundation. I said 70% of our state is going to community foundations, and can you guess why? And I was at a big community foundation out in the Midwest at that point, and they guessed wrong 10 times in a row. Huh. So I thought, okay, well, maybe it isn't as obvious as we think. But here's the consequences of not guessing right. As you can see here from Jen, in her research, they found that if you get to 3 not me's, if you're not connecting with my identities, then you're going to lose my heart and then my money, because my heart is connected to my money. This is a membership letter that was done for an environmental group out in Minnesota called Friends of the Mississippi River. Now, the Mississippi River starts clean, and then it hits eventually St. Paul and the other place, Minneapolis. And When it hits there, it becomes a sewer, and it is then devoid of life. And if your kid falls in it, you take them to the hospital. If you can't eat the fish that comes out of it, well, nobody really wants that. They want this to be fixed. And so this letter was sent to people who already belong to some other environmental group, like Sierra Club or something like that, right? Audubon Society. And it's the Mississippi River talking, and the Mississippi River saying, will you be my friend? That's the simple statement, the simple question being asked. And I have labeled it here with "is this me" arrows, just so you can see how many other times I'm trying to address the identity, the nature lover identity of the person on the receiving end. And what happened? Well, it was a huge success. Their membership in this Friends of the Mississippi River jumped 20% with just one letter, because the letter was entirely about the reader, not about the Friends of the Mississippi River. So let's go back to why 70% of our estate goes to the local community foundation. Well, let's see why. Well, first of all, we know what they are. We know what community foundations are, and most people don't, actually, the general public. And we knew about it because community foundations were part of our early careers. We both, my wife and I, worked in the nonprofit arts world. And if you are in the nonprofit world, then you definitely know what a community foundation is, because you're going to them for grant money. And you probably you're getting turned down sometimes, and you're thinking about it. Well, what do they like, and so forth and so on. Anyway, so we knew about them because our early careers were in the nonprofit world, not just any part of the nonprofit world, but the arts world. So that's another love. We call us arts lovers? Yeah, we sure are. We are thankful for the arts. They have made such a difference to our life. Also, we worked in two different agencies, but we met because of the nonprofit arts world. And so that's another thing. We met that way. And then we fell in love. Oh, and now we're married 34 years plus. And there's one other thing. So you got four identities so far, none of which were guessed by the Community Foundation that I was challenging. And here's the number 5, which of course is, if you do know anything about bequest marketing, is the number one data point anticipating somebody might put a gift for charity in their will, and that is because they have no heirs. We got married late in life, late 30s and so forth, and we never ended up having children. Now, we're a typical-ish middle-class U.S. household. We both were working professionals. We saved a lot of money. We have good assets, and yet we have no heirs. Nobody who really needs it in the family either, like nieces or nephews. So where's it going? It's going to charity. And that's why 70% goes to the Community Foundation, and they didn't guess that. Learning about identities can really help build your income. Working with the identities that are out there in your donor pool. They're not just a bunch of wallets, they're a bunch of people with identities. Here's something I learned in 2014, that the goldfish, once subordinate to the average adult human in attention span, now has a longer attention span than the average adult human. In 2013, we science discovered that. That's why I get the little guy in the lab coat there. And so what happened? I mean, something went crazy, right? Well, yeah. You love it, I love it. It's called the internet. And around 2007, Facebook, for instance, started to dominate the social media world and became a really big, huge thing. And also 2007, another critical year, was the year the iPhone was introduced. And between those two events, among other things, and now we shop online, blah, blah, blah. In fact, we can't even go to a store sometimes. Our attention span has been shattered, absolutely shattered, and that's not coming back. So you have to work with that. You have to work with it in order to keep people reading and interested and behaving in the way you'd like them to behave, which is to make a gift. Something else we learned, 2013, this is when I was thinking about, what are the basics for donor communications? And I realized, okay, I'm really only doing three things. I'm asking for your help, then I'm going to thank you for that help, and that's in order to reciprocate, which is a psychological obligation. If you don't reciprocate well, if you thank me in a perfunctory way, then I don't like you. I dismiss it. So be the best thanker on the block and you'll raise more money. And then there's finally a third thing, and this is very important because we know we've been doing donor research forever, decades, and the number one question in donor research is, what did you do with my money? Did it help? And a lot of times, if you don't answer that question, the answer that the donor comes up with on their own is, yeah, probably not. So I'll move on. So you're asked, you thank, you report. That's all you do over and over and over and over and over and over. And as it happens, I came up with this at exactly the same time as a group, as the Better Community fundraising company out in Seattle came up with the very same thing, only they added, you ask, you thank, you report, repeat. You ask, you thank, you report, repeat. This is all you need to do in donor communications, but charities are so obsessed by the money that they don't realize that asking is just part of a bigger system that has two other parts, and that the real treasure, as you can see here, is in your thanking and your reporting, which is when you build that so-called relationship that we're all hoping happens. So charity cares about the money, so you think about the ask. The donor doesn't care about the money at all, pretty much, because they're only giving you their surplus. They're not giving the money they need to put food on the table or pay the light bill. So you're getting their surplus. What they do care about, and you can see I've got a graying out here because you don't do it very well. Your thank yous are probably predictable, and your reporting is probably god awful. So there's something good to work on. What you should think is that my thanking and my reporting are like hugs, particularly now when everybody's locked down. How are you going to hug me? How are you going to reach out and hug me? You're going to do it with stuff like this. So this actually is Vita Hoven. I recommend anybody who wants to get an ongoing course in great donor communications, donor-centered communications, donor-loving communications, that you make a gift. It doesn't have to be a big gift, to Vita Hoven, and help a kid, an orphan kid in Tijuana, Mexico. The organization itself is based in San Diego, so you can deduct that from your taxes if you want, and you're going to get stuff like this. Now, those little coupons that say one free hug, those weren't on the original. Those were me putting little notes here and there so you could see where they were doing their hugging, and the subject line, meowing forever, Tom, we love you. Personalized, then dear Tom. This is Valentine's Day. They use any occasion. Peanut butter day, they'll send me something. Today and every day, you really are everything that's right about this world. You show up. You recycle whenever possible. You smile at strangers. You vote even when it doesn't seem to matter, but you don't stop there. You jump into action for a friend in need. You share your food with the hungry. You feel outrage, in the face of cruelty. You just can't contain your goodness and love, Tom, etc., etc., etc. This comes in once a week, a couple of times a month, not just electronically, but in print. And it's like, they've trained me to open their emails because I get this surge of good feeling from it. Okay, here's something we learned in 2010, more research. Stats, a lot of charities, the first thing they want to do is shove some stats down the throat of their individual donors. And that's the wrong throat to be shoving them down, because individuals don't really actually care all that much about your stats. Your stats don't have any emotional context for them, and they don't cause people to feel anything. Stats are for grant applications, not for individuals. And let me show you the research. Dan Ariely, wonderful psychologist up at Duke, and he did the lab work, and basically you can see there's one tall bar and then two shorter bars. So the tall bar on the left there, that's the amount of money given when you just tell anecdotes, and they're called in psychology research identifiable lives. So the story of one child in trouble, you tell that story, you get that kind of response from the people you sent it to. Now, if you go to the middle, that's what happens when you just use statistics, right? And you're trying to tell me, well, there are 782 of these kids who need your help. Will you do that? And you can see that response falls by more than half. And then see what you got on the right. You've got where we have thinking and feeling commingled, and look what's happened. You didn't bounce way back to the levels of feeling alone. The actual presence of your data can, not always, can suppress giving. So you use it with care, you use it with some training, that would be the best. Here's learned in 2007. This is when the book Made to Stick came out. So what did Made to Stick tell us? Chip Heath, Dan Heath, Harvard, Stanford, they did research to discover why do some messages penetrate and other messages don't? And the answer turned out to be something pretty easy to understand, and that is we are all suffering from what they call the curse of knowledge. We know too much, and we can't see our organization the way outsiders, people who are not on staff or on the board for that matter, do. Now, the people on the outside need inspiration. They do not need more information. Our lives are absolutely swamped with information. Yours will not make any great difference to me. What I do need is to be inspired to make a gift. I'm going to show you here. This is a case for support from a university research laboratory. They're trying to raise $1 billion, right? And for a children's hospital, actually. And they sent this to me because they knew I would treat it roughly, and they expected that. They actually wanted that. So what I did is they wanted to know, this is what their committee wrote, and the insiders and doctors, people with big brains, PhDs. And so I took this was the original, and I just relabeled things in it, not all of them, actually. I gave them a couple of passes here, but I labeled all the jargon with the word jargon, and then every once in a while when they just jumped off a cliff, I'd even use the word pompous, and I sent it back to them and said, so now what do you want to do? Which is basically they wanted rewrite, which they got. And they made their $1 billion. In fact, they made another billion on top of that. But of course, that's fundraising in Silicon Valley, which is a very different kettle of fish. Seth Godin, who is my #1 guru for marketing, all things marketing, he has a free daily blog, and everyone should subscribe because it's like getting a fortune cookie with actual wisdom inside every day. And one of the things he said was that our target markets, that is, people who you would wish to give a gift to you, or people who are already on your donor list, are often, quote unquote, lazy people in a hurry. Now, again, he doesn't mean that pejoratively. He means you gotta deal with this. You have to work with the realities of your target market. All right, lazy people in a hurry. All right. So I'm going to give you some things, a few last things to think about. One is this: get this book. It's available online as a PDF, and you can see the actual URL there, but you don't need that. If you just Google irrefutable canons, trust me, there is no other irrefutable canons out there. And Gerald Panis is one of the all-time masters of fundraising, and unfortunately died 2 years ago. But before he left, this was a relatively recent publication of his for free. He put down whatever he could think of that made a difference, and it's all in there, and it's fun to read because he's a great writer. He tells a lot of stories. He's a real, kind of rocking on the front porch conversationalist. Do it, just do it. You'll get so much out of this. Then there's my book, and I'm going to sell you my book. Now, I don't care if you buy the book or not, but the what's in this book. This book came out of a need that I started to recognize, God, I don't know, almost 20 years ago as I was talking around the world. First time I noticed it was down in Australia, in fact, and somebody came up afterwards and said, Tom, thank you. That was great. Of course, they're very polite. And she said, unfortunately, I can't do what you're suggesting because my headmaster, in her case, this is for private school, won't let me use a PS in a letter. He thinks it's undignified. And I thought, oh, criminy or crumb or rubbish or I don't know, something Australian. And so I started to collect all these erroneous, opinions that are out there, and they're out there in abundance because people don't know much about donor communications, not the real stuff. If they have the money, they basically hire an agency, and if they don't have the money, well, then you get second guessed to death, and you jump jobs, and that's why fundraisers tend to have a tenure of 18 months, according to the fundraising effectiveness project, because they get angry. They're learning stuff and then they can't apply it because some idiot is second guessing them. So one of the things we talked about, we talked earlier, that's why we had the little pink banner up in the very beginning that said anybody could be our donor. No, they're not going to. No, it's going to be a very small percentage of any population are going to be your truest of true believers. Well, here's another misconception. We'll get donors for life, and then they say, next thing, so we need younger donors. Hey, if we could get them in their 20s, wow, they would be with us until their 80s. Think of all those years of giving. Well, that's not actually how it works. Here's how long does the average donor stick around? So what you're looking at are world-sourced answers. I talk to every expert I can get my hands on. Most of them will talk to me. And I said, okay, here's your simple question. How long does the average donor stick around? All right. Well, you can see there are two answers to this: 4 to 6 years or 7 to 10 years. Now, the 7 to 10 years is for monthly donors. The 4 to 6 years are for annual donors. Now, there are many, many exceptions to this, but this is what you have to, this is your reality. This is what you have to work with. that there will be attrition on your list, and there'll be lots of it. And you need to refresh that list with acquisition all the time. And if you want to be at the high end of those ranges, the 6 years rather than the 4 years, or the 10 years rather than the 7 years, then you've got to do a little bit more with your relationship with your donors than you probably are doing. All right, here's another one. We need younger donors. Well, there you go. There's the same thing. No, actually you don't. And there's a good reason for that. First of all, notice the countries. They're all the English-speaking countries. Canada, Australia, US, New Zealand, UK, Irish. We have good data from all those countries. And the data says that the average donor is most likely to be 75 years of age. Now, 55 is when people start age into their prime giving years, and that's very important. What are those prime giving years? Well, they're the years when I finally have some surplus income that I can give away to charity. My life building years are the years before that, when I maybe have partnered up with somebody, perhaps we have children, perhaps we want a home together, we're buying stuff, we're building, we're creating a life. So forth and so on, so forth and so on, so forth and so on. When do I finally get some surplus? Well, around age 55, you see a big jump in that particular cohort starting to give, and they kind of keep giving a little bit more up to around 65 when it kind of levels off. But the bulk of your donors will tend to be in the 65 and older range, and I have seen research on this over and over and over for all sorts of causes, and it is consistent. One of the things you probably would realize, I hope, is that as eyes get older, they change shape, and you need glasses, and you need sometimes cataract surgery. And particularly, hey, you're in Florida, you know this, and so your type has to be bigger. Has to be. Not like, oh, I don't like it. No, I don't care. In fact, the last thing I care about is whether my charity clients like my stuff. And I insist that they don't change a word I write. That's called the verbatim rule, because I don't care what they think. All I care about is the response to the stuff I'm sending out. If I'm sending out an appeal, I want great response, and nobody on the inside is going to know how to do that. They're going to say things like, well, I don't, the type's too big. And it's like, go away. All right, here's another one. Old people don't care about online, so, why should we? And it's like, yeah. No, they love online. Look at who the biggest users are. Baby boomers, people born, and that the baby boomer cohort, thank goodness they love the internet, because they are currently our biggest opportunity for fundraising. They have reached that special age where they have surplus income, and if they haven't lost everything because of coronavirus and the craziness that's going on, then well, then they're giving. They're still giving. That's what research in the UK just found, that people don't stop giving because of this pandemic. If they still have money, of course. If they still have a stable income, they're still giving to their favorite causes. In fact, they're looking for other causes, pandemic related, so they can help even more. All right. And how about bequests? Let's shut down on this. Bequests. Won't see that money for a long time, says somebody with their arms crossed, usually on the board. And that's not true either. Here's what we found out from very good research done in the UK and the US, that within 3 years, if you set up a formal marketing program for bequest giving, you will start to see the pipeline flow. Now, there's a reason for that. It has to do with the various times in our lives when we update our wills, one of which tends to be in the mid-70s, late 70s. And then we reach the CDC's predicted expected, length of life, and the will is probated. So that's what I have to tell you today. And wear your mask.
Thank you so much, Tom. We just have a couple of minutes left, and we do have a question here. When you're talking about the longevity of our donors, the average lifespan of a donor, does that apply to all types of organizations, like it would an institutional foundation donors as it would another type of nonprofit?
Well, it will vary. And for instance, we know that the largest chunk of the philanthropic pie in the United States goes to church-related, faith-based giving, right? So if you're going to church every week, you're basically going to, be putting something in the plate every week, and so you're giving until you stop going. So there are outliers, other factors that can, but I would say it's safer. It's always safer to assume worst case than best case. Assume you're not an exception to that rule.
Great. What advice would you give to an organization just starting out without plan, or just who is just starting out with a planned giving program?
What took you so long? Thank goodness you're starting out. The only thing you actually have to do for bequest giving to get the whole program up and running is to send a letter once a year to your existing donor base, the people who have given to you twice or 3 times or 4 times, people who have already kind of raised their hand and said, I'm interested in you. And you send a letter to them, and that letter is a combination thank you and offer. The thank you part is you start by saying, thanks for your, compassion. We really love having you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, by the way, some donors also have considered, and that's an important word in this letter, considered putting a gift in their will for XYZ charity. And if you want to do that, well, we have this legacy society you can join. If you're not ready to do it, we have some information we can send you, blah, blah, blah. Thank you again, thank you, and that's it. It's a short 1-page letter. The biggest problem with bequest marketing, they've discovered in research up in Canada, was people were very willing to consider doing this, but it never occurred to them to do it. And so, when you ask, would you do it? 95% said, of course. And when you said, well, did you? Only 5% had. So the other, the missing 90% were the people, oh, I never thought to do that.
Great. We have time for one more question. Going to jump in here. And when you think about the ROI for direct mail for traditional mailed appeals, do you advise nonprofits to purge their mail list of donors who lapsed for a few years?
Lapsed is your second most likely pool of prospects. Your first are the people who gave within the last, let's say, 12, 14, 16 months, near term. That's my timer going off. Near term donors. The lapsed people, they often lapse for no good reason. I mean, it isn't like they decided I hate you. They just didn't respond. So you go back to them and basically hug them and say, hey, we miss you. Would you, because if nothing much has changed, if they didn't make an active decision to hate you, then they're liable or likely, or at least more likely than the average person, to say, oh, yeah, sure.
That is great. I know we've all thoroughly enjoyed having you speak with us today. Everyone,